All right, my babies. Well, we're back. And 10.11, concept modeling. Uh, okay, so I feel like what I started doing is I started kind of like, because there's a familiar pattern in every single one of these chapters. It's like 10.1, 10.1, 10.2. They all have like a purpose, a description, the elements of it, and the usage considerations, which is ultimately like pros and cons. So anytime I kind of like read right now the title, I go like, what are they talking about? And then I try to attach it to something that's in my head. And then what's the purpose of concept modeling? I have no idea. What is concept modeling? It's kind of like designing a concept. And a concept could lead to a feature, to a product, could be the result of a feature or a product, I have no idea. So a concept model is used to organize the business vocabulary needed to consistently and thoroughly communicate the knowledge of the domain. All right, so I was off. It was basically a concept modeling is kind of like how we're going to explain the concept that we're working on, or we're dealing with, or we're working around. Maybe I wasn't that off, but I was. All right, so what's the description? A concept model starts with a glossary, which typically focuses on the core noun, concepts of a domain. Concept models put a premium on high-level quality, design-independent definitions that are free of data or implementation biases. Concept models also emphasize rich vocabulary. So, is it me or does it feel like an outline? Like a model is basically like, there's a glossary, there's focuses on the core noun concepts of the domain. It's like, what are the functions of the domain? Put a premium on high quality design, independent definitions, and free of data or implementation biases. Concept models also emphasize rich vocabulary and shit like this. So a concept model identifies the correct choice of terms to use in communications, including all business analysis information, and it is especially important where high precision and subtle distinctions need to be made. It identifies the correct choice of terms to use in communications. So, no, it's not an outline. It feels like it's outlining, right? It's kind of like circling the things, kind of like circling the things that are attributed to which things. I think that's what a concept model is. I'm pretty sure we do it automatically on something small, but I'm sure, I imagine the people that researched this were researching enterprise. So concept models can be effective where the enterprise seeks to organize, retain, build on, manage, and communicate core knowledge, right? Like if the enterprise wants to actually like document what's going on. The initiative needs to capture large numbers of business rules. You need this when you're trying to understand what the fuck's going on in a company, right? And I'm sure this only kind of like, this either is being built as you actually move forward or is being restructured as at one point. There is resistance from stakeholders about the perceived technical nature of the data models, class diagrams, or data element nomenclature and definition. Most of the times when you're kind of like not really like being able to understand another person, the higher chance is what you're trying to translate for them to understand and what they're trying to translate is kind of like different. So when you do a concept model, what effectively you're doing is you're kind of like, you're actually creating constraints for the people that are going to be working on something. You're creating constraints, and we're thinking about it from the perspective of I don't know. I asked a person the other day, was like, my bad. A person asked me the other day. They asked me like, are you happy? Yeah? And my response was ecstatic. Why wouldn't I be, right? And so then I looked at them. It was like, happy doing what? And then and he looks at me going like, huh? It's just like, because like, there are things that kind of make me sad. I am happy, but like, what is it that you're actually discussing with me? Is it what makes me happy? Is it where I'm happier? Like, what is that question? It's just very open-ended. So when he narrowed it down, we kind of like got to like more work-related like conversations where that kind of like became a thing, and like he realized the difference in happiness, and like, he was asking a broad question, and with the constraints of like where, what, who, why, and all these things, suddenly we were able to kind of like communicate and give direction. And I imagine when you're actually trying to communicate with shareholders, like an engineer sees the world from an engineer's perspective. Like, what the fuck is that, right? I don't know, is it a diesel engine engineer's perspective, or is it a gas engine engineer's perspective, or is it a nuclear power plant engineer's perspective, or is it just like a hydraulic system engineer's perspective, or a steam engine, right? So there are like different designs, different structures, and all of them are within our heads. So anytime we're having conversations, most of the time, unless we agree on what we're talking about and how we're talking about it and what each element means, there potentially would lead to kind of like a miscommunication. And if you're dealing with many stakeholders across an enterprise, man, you know what enterprise is? It's a lot of fucking people. Then ultimately you'll need to tell them, when I mention this, this is what I mean. This is the actual definition of this, so don't, what? Anyways, innovative solutions are sought when re-engineering business processes or other aspects of business capability. That's one. And enterprise faces regulatory or compliance challenges. Okay, that's true, because like, you're kind of like, you want to understand. Compliance challenges are tricky because ultimately it's what people are bringing for you, and you have to kind of like be able to explain them a certain kind of way. So it's funny because like, when you're dealing with the outside, you kind of have to be able to to express the inside properly so the outside can understand. Because every culture grows differently, like every language develops differently, every area develops differently, and it's super fun to kind of like consider it from this scope. A concept model differs from a data model. The goal of a concept model is to support the expression of natural language statements. One second. When did we do the data model? We haven't done the data model yet. A concept model differs from data model. The goal of a concept model is to support the expression of natural language statements and supply their semantics. Concept models are not intended to unify, codify, and simplify data. No. Yeah, it's not about the data. It's about, I think, the journey of the data. Therefore, the vocabulary included. Any system requires basically like silos where things are kind of like, I don't know, being fermented, being churned, being solved, resolved, something, and then there's a flow, and what this leads to and what this leads to. And in between, there's kind of like, different functionalities of different things that allow for that flow to happen. And so I imagine like concept models allow for you to understand what the fuck's going on, but the data kind of like allows you to kind of like see the results of what's going on, or kind of like allows you to objectify what's going on. Objectify. Concept models are often rendered graphically. Of course, it's like squares and circles, and this goes here, and a user goes here. Elements. What are the elements of a concept? There are noun concepts, verb concepts, and other connections. A noun concept, the most basic concepts in concept model are noun concepts of the domain, which are simply givens of the space. I'd imagine if you're talking about a restaurant, like you kind of like say service station, barista space, bar, right? Service area. All of these kind of become the noun concepts, I think, right? And the verb concepts provide basic structural connections. Again, like, you're separating the concept as a system. And if you're going back to the restaurant area, the verb concept kind of lives between two nouns. Like, the waiter is taking the food. So there's the kitchen, which is a noun concept, to the service area. And the service station is where the kind of like, the waiter will go to the kitchen, will get the food at the service station, get everything that needs to be going on the table, and then delivers it. So like, it's basically that it's two verb concepts, like taking it to the service station, but taking it to the user, right? It's the same verb concept going twice. These wordings by themselves are not necessarily sentences. Rather, they are building blocks of sentences, such as business rule statements. Sometimes verb concepts are derived, inferred, or computed by definitional rules. Yeah, I think the better way to actually see it is the functionality in between different kind of like, I don't know, the different points on the system. Since concept models must support rich meaning, other types of standard connections are used. Categorizations, classifications, positive whole part connections, and roles. Right, so like there's the kitchen, but there's also the kitchen that where the chefs kind of live, and there's the kitchen where the waiter lives, because they have to go into the kitchen and get something and go on. There's a kitchen where basically the people that are cleaning the dishes lives. And so each one of these are kind of like a separate category, and the connections between them are noun and verb concepts. Why not? Verbal considerations. There's categorizations, classifications, partitive, roles. Yeah, exactly, because like the kitchen has different parts, so the whole kitchen is a classification, and it's categorized by where everything gets kind of like small, gets washed, where everything gets cooked, and where everything gets frozen, and where everything is kind of like prepared, and all of these are kind of like connected under the whole classification, under the categorization of the kitchen, and like the separations, I guess, and the connections that makes a kitchen, including the chef, which each has kind of like a certain role to do, or maybe the machinery as well. I'm not sure, or maybe when they mean roles here, they mean the classifications of each element. Like there's the washing area. What's the role in the system of the washing area? And I feel that's it. Like the functionality, the function and the functionality. And what are the usage considerations? Well, the strengths are they provide business-friendly way to communicate with stakeholders about precise meanings and subtle distinctions, is independent of data design biases, and often limited business vocabulary coverage of data models, proves highly useful for white-collar, knowledge-rich, decision-laden business processes. Yeah, it kind of creates the from A to Z part, so people know exactly where to kind of like start, or where to like what to expect from where to expect something from where, what to expect, if they have something to expect, where to expect it from. Yeah. And it helps ensure a large number of business rules and complex decision tables are free of ambiguity and fit together cohesively. It really does take like the whole spaghetti of things that's happening within a business, and then kind of like, I don't know, have you ever watched one of those like old building, and like a new electrician kind of like realigns the whole thing and recolors the whole lights, the whole wires? Yeah, that kind of structure. What are the limitations? May set expectations too high about how much integration based on business semantics can be achieved on relatively short notice. Hey, I didn't like the may part, but anyways, requires a specialized skill set based on the ability to think abstractly. Yeah, it's not a limitation. But you kind of like need people who know what the fuck who know how they're thinking about it, or how they're approaching it, or are at the very least aware of where they are within the current approach. And the knowledge rule focus may be foreign to stakeholders. Yeah, it's like you're probably talking to some dum-dums, but they probably invested or are doing separate jobs that are not connected to the whole and are not really interested in it, so yay. It requires tooling to actively support real-time use of standard business terminology in writing business rules, requirements, and other forms of business communication. When they're mentioning here tooling, they're like, in order for you to get a whole, I don't know, man. I currently look at tooling as more of a skill build instead of like a skill build instead of a something you can use. Because over and over, what we end up doing is we end up like following a certain structure that worked before and tweaking it. So I feel that structure becomes the tool, but because it's a mental tool that we're discussing, it's a different thing. Anyways, next is data dictionary. Fucking love you guys.